tribes are as follows. The Ramnes are named after Romulus himself and are believed to have represented the original Latin population. The Tites are named after Titus Tatius, the Sabine king, and are said to have been comprised of Sabines. The Luceres, finally, are thought to have been composed of Etruscans, although their origin is less certain. Plutarch cites a statement by Varro from De Lingua Latina, according to which the Titienses were named after Tatius, the Ramnes after Romulus, and the Luceres after Lucumo, an Etruscan name. However, an alternative perspective exists, suggesting that the names themselves might be of Etruscan origin. This hypothesis proposes that the establishment of the Luceres, and perhaps the other tribes as well, might date back to a later period, around the 6th century BCE, coinciding with a significant Etruscan influence in Rome. This hypothesis is further supported by the fact that Rome was situated on the Tiber River, the traditional border between Etruria and Latium, and may have had a substantial Etruscan population from the outset. Some scholars propose a more speculative theory that Ramnes might have Indo-Persian origins, linked to mythical heroes such as Rama, transmitted through Greek and Etruscan influences. There are key diverse explanations for the names, ranging from Romulus, Tatius, and Lucumo to a potential Etruscan origin for all, reveal the complexity and uncertainty surrounding the true etymologies and the ethnic composition they represent. This suggests a possible merging of legendary figures with broader ethnic groups, or later interpretations of tribal origins. If the very names of the tribes were Etruscan, this would challenge the straightforward Latin Sabine Etruscan ethnic division attributed to the tribes and suggest a more significant Etruscan influence on Roman institutions in the early phase than traditionally believed, or a later reinterpretation of earlier tribal structures. 4. Ethnic and social structure of the early Roman community and its reflection in the tribes. It was widely believed that the 3 Romulian tribes represented the main ethnic groups of archaic Rome, Latins, Ramnes, Sabines, Tites, and probably Etruscans, Luceres. This interpretation reflects the legendary founding story of Rome, which includes the fusion of Romulus's followers, Latins, with the Sabines, led by Titus Tatius, after the famous rape of the Sabine women episode. Rome's geographical position on the Tiber River, the traditional border with Etruria, also suggests the possibility of a significant Etruscan presence in the city from its origins. However, it is crucial to consider the primary social structure of archaic Rome, characterized by the division between patricians, a small elite who monopolized political power, and plebeians who constituted the majority of Roman society. The patricians traced their lineage back to the first Senate established by Romulus, and the gentes, clans, formed the aristocracy. Interestingly, the 16 oldest voting tribes in later Rome bore the names of ancient patrician gentes, suggesting a potential link between the early tribes and the patrician class. Initially, membership in the curiae, the subdivisions of the tribes, was believed to be limited to patricians. However, Mommsen's argument for the inclusion of plebeians in voting from the beginning, or at least from an early date, is now generally accepted. The idea that the tribes represented ethnic groups is a plausible explanation for their initial formation, reflecting the amalgamation of different communities in the early Roman state. However, the potential Etruscan origin of the names complicates this direct interpretation. The connection between the later voting tribes and the patrician gentes suggests a possible evolution where the initial ethnic divisions became more closely associated with social status and lineage, particularly with the rise of the patrician class, or fee. Functions and role of the tribus gentilicii in the society and political organization of archaic Rome. The Romulian tribes played crucial functions in the society and political organization of archaic Rome. From a military standpoint, each tribe was divided into 10 curiae, and each curia provided a certain number of soldiers to the army, 100 infantry and 10 cavalry. The three tribes together provided approximately 1,000 infantry and 300 cavalry, the latter known as the celeres, who formed the royal bodyguard. Beyond their military function, the tribes served as units for taxation, military tai, conscription, and the census. The curiae, as subdivisions of the tribes, formed the assembly known as the comitia curiata. Under the kings, this assembly held significant powers, including the election of a new king, proposed by the interrex, the approval of a law conferring imperium on the king, lex curiata de imperio, the decision on declaring war, judgments, in cases of appeal, matters relating to arrogatio, and the decision on the admission of foreigners among the patricians. Subsequently, under Servius Tullius, the rights to declare war and decide on appeals were transferred to another legislative assembly, the Comitia Centuriata. The primary functions of the early tribes appear to have been fundamentally practical, organizing the population for military service and resource management, taxation. This highlights the early Roman state's focus on survival and expansion. The Comitia Curiata, based on the tribal structure, was the earliest form of Roman popular assembly, indicating that the tribes played a crucial role in Rome's nascent political organization, albeit under the authority of the king. The gradual transfer of power to other assemblies suggests an evolution of the Roman political system. Alternative theories or interpretations on the origin and composition of these early Roman tribes. Although tradition attributes the creation of the three tribes to Romulus immediately after the founding of Rome, alternative theories exist regarding the origin and composition of these primordial groups. One modern theory suggests that the establishment of the Luceres might belong to a later period, around the 6th century BCE, coinciding with increased Etruscan influence in Rome. This would imply that the three-tribe system might have evolved over time. Another, more radical perspective argues that the Romulean tribes themselves might be an antiquarian reconstruction, possibly the work of Marcus Terentius Varro. This hypothesis challenges the historicity of the traditional account and suggests the need for a critical evaluation of ancient sources, which might reflect later understandings of early Roman history. Some ancient writers and modern scholars have attempted to establish a connection between these tribes and the recruitment of the earliest priests, augurs, and pontiffs. However, this view is not strongly supported by evidence and is likely a later reconstruction. The possibility that the Romulian tribes are a later antiquarian invention raises fundamental questions about the historicity of the traditional narrative and suggests the need for a critical evaluation of ancient sources, which might reflect later understandings of early Roman history. The attempt to link the tribes and the early priesthood, although likely a later interpretation, reveals a tendency to seek order and symmetry in the early Roman state, connecting social divisions to religious organization. The lack of solid evidence for this connection highlights the dangers of imposing later frameworks onto earlier periods. 7. Evolution and modifications of the tribes in the course of later Roman history, the tribal system underwent significant evolutions and modifications. The original 3 ethnic tribes were gradually replaced by the creation of new local tribes, likely under Servius Tullius. The precise date is uncertain, but by 495 BCE, 17 rustic tribes to 35, 4 urban and 31 rustic. Interestingly, 4 urban and 31 rustic. Interestingly, Lucius Tarquinius Priscus added new centuries to the Ramnes, Tities and Luceres, indicating their continued relevance in the early regal period, circa 1659 BCE. In the Republican era, citizenship was tied to membership in these local tribes based on residence, and this system expanded as Rome conquered new territories and granted citizenship. The shift from the initial 3 tribes, likely ethnic, to a system of local tribes based on geography under Servius Tullius represents a significant change in Roman social and political organization, likely driven by population growth and territorial expansion. The continued mention of the Ramnes, Tities, and Luceres, even after the introduction of the local tribes, suggests that the original tribes retained some form of identity or function, perhaps in specific areas such as military organization or religious traditions. Connections between these tribes and the later tribal divisions of Rome. Several connections existed between the early Roman tribes and the later tribal divisions. As mentioned earlier, the 16 oldest voting tribes of the later Republic bore the names of ancient patrician gentes, suggesting a lineage or connection to the original Romulian tribes or their most prominent families. Furthermore, the 6 oldest centuries of cavalry in the Republican era were composed of 2 each from the Ramnes, Tities, and Luceres, a direct link in military organization. Subsequently, the tribal system evolved to encompass 35 tribes used for voting in the tribal assembly, Comitia Tributa. It is important to note that each tribe had an equal vote, regardless of population size. A clear connection between the Romulian tribes and the structure of the early Roman